Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important updates that took place during the previous night of the local time, and believe me, there are a lot of very interesting updates. First of all, of course, we're going to start with Kherson area, where some Russian bloggers, military experts reported that the Ukrainians continue preparation of their offensive operation along the Dnipro River. The Ukrainians continue to intensify their actions, and the Russian blogger reported that the Ukrainians have redeployed at least few platoons of S-300 systems. Basically, they want to support and protect their forces against the Russian helicopters, against the Russian Su-25 bombers, and so on. Furthermore, the Russians reported that to continue to increase the pressure, to intensify the actions, the Russians redeployed the forces of 93rd Mechanized Brigade. This is our 93rd Mechanized Brigade. Recently, this brigade was located in the vicinity of Artyomovsk, but according to information we have, this 93rd Mechanized Brigade is planned to be redeployed in direction of Novokakhovka, and this brigade is going to open and start the second operation to create a bridgehead in the vicinity of Novokakhovka from Kazatskaya. So these guys, according to the Ukrainian plans, these guys are not going to be redeployed in direction of Antonov bridge, but they will have their own separate operation to create a bridgehead from like Kherson, Dnipryany, Novokakhovka, Tavrisk, and so on, on this bridgehead. To tell the truth, I was very surprised when I got this update, because from one side it's like unlogical, but from the other side it's logical, because this 93rd Brigade is very familiar with the bridgehead and the situation in Artyomovsk, and that was one of the most important, one of the most famous brigades during the Battle of Artyomovsk. But for some reasons the Ukrainians took a decision to, first of all, to fulfill and then to redeploy them in direction of Novokakhovka. But they could redeploy the forces of 38th Marine Brigade in the vicinity of Novokakhovka, but probably the results of Ukrainian attack in direction of Zaporizhzhia, when the newly created brigade, most of the newly created brigades were defeated, probably the Ukrainians took a decision not to risk and not to destroy another brigade during this operation, and probably they took a decision to order or to make this 93rd Brigade to create a bridgehead on the Russian side of Novokakhovka, somewhere here, and after that maybe they will send the forces of 38th Brigade. But this is like very interesting redeployment. For now, this redeployment is not confirmed by any mappers. It was confirmed just by the Russian intelligence or something like this. Now we're moving further. We have a lot more redeployment updates, and currently the Ukrainians have redeployed the 78th Regiment Hearts air assault forces in the vicinity of Novodanilovka, probably to enforce and increase the forces of and power and mighty of 47th and 118th Brigade, Mechanized Brigade, that are currently trying to penetrate and to attack the Russians' positions in Robotina. Also, there is the Ukrainians a little bit changed and reformatted the positions of their forces in the vicinity between Gulyapole and Orekhov, and the Ukrainians got the 33rd position forces a little bit closer to the combat line in the vicinity of Charivna, and probably the Ukrainians are trying and planning to attack the Russians in direction of Palogi from the north, or they are going to reinforce the forces of 37th Brigade and 47th Brigade and to attack in direction of Verbova. Furthermore, the Ukrainians completely redeployed the forces of 36th Marine Battalion in the vicinity of Livadne. There used to be, during the first waves, there was just 501st Marine Battalion, but basically and currently the Ukrainians have redeployed the entire brigade in this direction, and currently this entire brigade is located on the line between Algovska, Livadne, Novodanilovka, Novopol, Rovnopol, the forces of 36th Mechanized Brigade. Furthermore, so this is all about the situation in Zaporizhzhia and South Donetsk with redeployment. The Ukrainians also published the video how they continue bombing and shelling the Russian positions in very deep back, and this video we see how the Ukrainians destroy the Russian air defense system Buk M1. At least the Ukrainian sources claims that on this video we can see the destroy of this Buk M1 system. Now we are moving further and we are going to get to the Donbas area, and a lot of updates are coming from Artyomovsk. And for example, the Russians published the Ukrainian sources published very interesting video, and the Russians noticed a very interesting update from Kramatorsk. As you know, a few days ago, these days, so maybe yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong, the Russians made a massive missile attack in this city, and as a result of that city, one public place was destroyed somewhere in the center, and according to the Russians, there was a very important meeting between Western officers, Western soldiers, probably NATO soldiers with maybe Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian officers, and so on. And there was a very heavy explosions. The Ukrainians are saying that there are a lot of losses among civilians and so on. And basically, the Ukrainians published a video where people were talking in English, and one of the person who was trying to take care of wounded civilian or soldier, this is his arm, and as you can see on his arm there is a tattoo of 3rd Range Battalion of United States of America. So basically the Russians are trying to say that currently the 3rd Range Battalion was successfully deployed in the vicinity of Kramatorsk, and basically this battalion or controls or coordinates the Ukrainian offensive operation in the flanks of Bakhmut. Furthermore, the Ukrainians published a lot of video, and Russians and Ukrainians published a lot of videos of Battle of Kurdyumovka, this settlement. The Ukrainians from their side published that as a result of offensive operation, they managed to clear and to establish the total control along the channel in front of Kurdyumovka, in front of Andreevka, and in front of Klishchevka. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians were establishing flag right in front of Kurdyumovka, and this is a very bad thing for the Russians, because the Ukrainians continue attacking, continue advancing, and the Ukrainians are saying that that attack was made by the forces of 28th Mechanized Brigade. So I'll remind you that when talking about area between Kurdyumovka and Zaryanovka, this area is under responsibilities of 28th Mechanized Brigade and of course of 24th Mechanized Brigade. A little bit to the north, right in front of Klishchevka, the main forces that responsible for any activities in this area is 3rd Assault Brigade Azov, and they're currently attacking the Russian positions. And when talking the northern flank, the northern trenches, this is the area of responsibilities of 5th Assault Brigade, and currently there are very fierce fightings. The Ukrainians attack from 3 sides, and the Russians published the video. This was from the Russian source, that how the Ukrainians were over 28th Mechanized Brigade were storming this line. This video is geolocated. They were trying to attack this forest line, and the thing is that, for example, as you can see in this video, there is a trenches along the channel, and there are around 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe platoon of Russian soldiers. Now the Ukrainians are trying to demine. They're using the distance demining systems, and basically they was trying to destroy mines, and they was trying to create a safe channel for the Ukrainian armored vehicles. The Russian soldiers started taking their positions, and after that the Ukrainians launched another demining tool, another demining missile, and after that they launch storming operation using 3 armored vehicles. Basically, what can you see on this video? The Russians, using just a small platoon of forces of soldiers, were trying to defend the channel, and the Ukrainians of 28th Mechanized Brigade were trying to storm the Russian positions using armored vehicles. And as you can see in this video, that there are no artillery strikes. First of all, that you can see that comes to your eyes is that the Russians are not using artillery support for those soldiers. Furthermore, the Russians are not using any missiles, grenades, any like pods, any specialized weapon to attack vehicles. And this is a very interesting thing, because we discussed this situation yesterday in the previous video when we were talking about Ugledar. I will finish this video that the Russians took decision to step back, and they just left their positions, and the Ukrainians basically established control over these trenches without even a real fight, because the Russians took a decision not to fight against armored vehicles. So we discussed this situation yesterday video in Ugledar, when we were saying that starting the operation Zaporizhzhia area, as soon as that operation started, we stopped to receive any updates or any video about any artillery strike or guided bomb strike against Ugledar. And basically, as I understand, there is a real problem for the Russian side of the lack of artillery systems, lack of shells, and so on. And basically, as I understand, not to like lose and not to avoid the reduction of the how to say of reputational losses in Zaporizhzhia. Probably the Russians took a decision to deploy in that direction as much as possible of artillery systems they have. And currently the entire front line, especially Bakhmut, Artyomov's front line, has a lack of artillery systems, because they just can't support the Russians during such a small attacks. And it wasn't a small attack, it was like attack with 3 armored vehicles, and it was very best situation for the Russian intelligence and artillery to destroy another 3 armored vehicles. But they couldn't do this, and they just didn't do anything. And furthermore, they lost their positions, and currently the Ukrainians reached the outskirts of Kurdyumovka. Furthermore, the Ukrainians during the previous night made more attempts to attack the Russian positions in the north, from like Fedorovka in direction Sakov and Tseti, from Razdolovka, and so on. And the Ukrainians continue offensive operation in direction of Yagidne. Furthermore, according to the sources we have, the Ukrainians have redeployed from strategical reserves the forces of 22nd Mechanized Brigade in the vicinity of Artyomovsk, and this is very important. Currently we see that these forces were deployed somewhere in the vicinity of like Grigorovka, between force of 57th, 77th brigades. So 22nd Mechanized Brigade here is to reinforce and to increase the pressure of the Ukrainians in the direction of Yagidne and Berkhovka, and this is newly created brigade. So we see that everything for the Ukrainians is real, and they're going to return back over Artyomovsk within the next few months. We'll see whether the Russians are able to do anything with this or not. And now we are getting to Liman front line. From important updates, we know that Ukrainians completed the redeployment of their 21st Mechanized Brigade in this area. Our 21st, where is 21st, just a second. Yes, this one, 21st Mechanized Brigade was redeployed completely to Zarechno-Tarskoye front line, also to reinforce the Ukrainian positions, maybe to replace the 42nd Mechanized Brigade that was defeated during the first waves of attack from the Ukrainian side in this direction. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.